he did. And he signals for the big guys to go into the next room. He's worked me over real good on the service stairs. The motel people, they dumped me at emergency.
So you're a friend of baby's?
That's him.
Oh, let me be, please. You got the wrong idea.
The story kicks off in Las Vegas, where Nick Wilde is chilling at a nightclub, enjoying his drink. As he watches the crowd, a woman named Doris walks in and immediately catches his eye. She heads to her table, and soon after, a guy named Osgood arrives. He's on a date with Doris and is hoping to pop the big question. But before he gets a chance, Nick steps in and asks Doris for a dance.
Let's go, come on. Hey, excuse me.
He doesn't just stop there. He starts making fun of Osgood, even snatching off his wig, which turns the whole thing into a full-blown spectacle. Humiliated, Osgood decides to leave, and Doris, feeling bad for him, pulls him outside. But Nick keeps up the teasing, and Osgood, despite looking past his prime for a fight, tells Doris he can handle the situation. Determined to stand his ground, Osgood grabs his wig from Nick and warns him to be careful.
That's enough!
Then, out of nowhere, he swings at Nick, managing to surprise him. Doris, impressed by Osgood's unexpected boldness, sees him in a new light. She jumps into his arms, calling him her hero, and the two leave together. Meanwhile, across town, a battered and bruised woman is dumped outside a hospital. A doctor, stepping outside for a quick breath of fresh air, spots her and rushes over. The medical staff tries to get information from her, but she only manages to whisper one name, Nick. Morning comes, and we catch up with Nick again, a skilled bodyguard with a serious gambling problem. He wakes up and gets ready for another day in Vegas. He's soon visited by a young guy named Cyrus Kinnick, who's looking to hire Nick as his guide and protector while he explores the city's gambling scene. Cyrus, aware that being a young guy in a world full of sharks makes him an easy target, wants someone tough to have his back.
Looked you up on an online guide to Vegas, but you weren't.
Nick agrees to the job, figuring it'll be an easy way to make some quick cash. Later, we see Nick and Osgood laughing about their nightclub stunt. It turns out the whole thing was an act to impress Doris. Osgood hands Nick $500 for helping him out, plus an extra $500 as a bonus. But Nick, being Nick, turns down the extra cash.
She's sure the real you.
Nick then stops by a diner to chat with his waitress friend, Roxy. He confides in her about his dream. He wants to save up $500,000 so he can leave Vegas behind and spend 5 peaceful years in Corsica.
Guess never on table 2 like you asked.
Roxy hands him a message from a woman named Holly, asking him to visit her place. When Nick arrives at Holly's house, she greets him with a hug. Holly, the same woman who was left injured at the hospital, is a high-end escort. She tells Nick about the horrifying ordeal she endured the previous night at the Golden Nugget Hotel. 3 men forced her into their suite, and their leader assaulted her first, followed by the other 2.
The envy of all mankind.
Afterward, they dump her outside the hospital like trash. She's willing to pay Nick for his time, $100 for the first hour, to help her find out who these guys are so she can take legal action. But Nick suggests she contact a lawyer or a private investigator instead.
When you talked about we're not IBM executives.
Holly is stunned that he refuses to help, given their history. Nick explains that the Golden Nugget is linked to organized crime and reminds her he had warned her to stay away from it.
Since then, I've stayed away from them.
The place is run by a man named Baby, who once tried to recruit Nick, but they agreed to stay out of each other's way. Despite knowing it's a bad idea, Nick visits a hotel housekeeper named Millicent for information. She later tells him that the man in question is Danny DeMarco.
It's Danny DeMarco, Suite 35.
The son of a powerful mobster from southern Italy. She warns Nick not to get involved, but of course, he does anyway. Nick calls Holly and tells her he found nothing, but she sees through the lie.
Said, never shit a shitter.
She reminds him how much she's done for him in the past and asks him to return the favor. Nick, unable to shake off her words, is lost in thought even while guiding Cyrus through different casinos.
What were you? SBS?
Eventually, he leaves Cyrus behind and heads back to Holly's place. This time, he tells her everything, Danny's name, his room number, but realizes she isn't interested in suing them.
I want him so bad for what he did to me.
She wants revenge. Holly asks Nick to weaken them first, so she could deliver her own form of justice. Despite knowing it's risky, Nick agrees. He heads to the Golden Nugget, posing as someone sent by Baby. Danny's bodyguards check him over before letting him in. Sitting in his luxurious suite, Danny is as cocky as they come. When Nick asks about Holly, Danny just laughs, calling her names and assuming Nick is some kind of pimp. To prove otherwise, Nick hands over his credit card. But Danny has no intention of letting Nick leave unscathed. He tells him he's not going anywhere until he's been taught a lesson. And just like that, his men close in on Nick, ready for a fight. Nick gets into a brawl with Danny's guys, using nothing but his credit card to fight them off. Danny pulls out a gun, but Nick dodges every shot, knocks him down, and ties them all up. He then calls Holly over. The moment she grabs a pair of scissors, Danny panics and quickly offers her $50,000 from his safe, begging her to just take the money and go. Holly hands the cash to Nick, but doesn't leave immediately. Instead, she considers giving Danny a very painful punishment and demands that he beg for forgiveness. Realizing she's dead serious, Danny breaks down, pleads for mercy, and she lets him go, but not without taking the money. As they step outside, Nick warns Holly that they need to leave town before trouble comes knocking. They split the $50,000, and Nick heads straight to the casino. He joins a blackjack table run by his dealer friend, Cassandra, and starts off strong, winning one bet after another. His luck doesn't seem to fade until Cassandra's shift ends. Not wanting to risk it, Nick walks away and meets up with Cyrus. But after a brief chat, he feels a gut instinct telling him his lucky streak isn't over yet. He rushes back to the table, raises his bet, and goes on an insane winning spree. His hot streak draws a crowd, including the pit boss, as his total winnings skyrocket past $500,000. Feeling unstoppable, he decides to place one last bet and wins big again. Later, Nick grabs a drink with Cyrus, who asks about his next move. Nick confidently tells him he's retiring for good. But as he heads to cash out, an unexpected wave of anxiety hits him. $500,000 suddenly feels like nothing, and he convinces himself that luck is still on his side. Ignoring all logic, he pushes every dollar, his $500,000 winnings plus the $25,000 from Holly, into one final bet. And just like that, he loses everything. Stunned and completely broke, Nick drowns himself in alcohol, overwhelmed with regret. He drinks until he blacks out. The next morning, Nick wakes up to find Cyrus beside him. Turns out, Cyrus had tipped the casino staff to take care of him. Cyrus then asks for a favor. He wants Nick to teach him how to be fearless and fight. That's when Nick finds out Cyrus is actually a self-made millionaire who's willing to make Nick rich in exchange for his guidance. But Nick isn't interested in the deal. Instead, he heads downstairs for another drink. Before he can enjoy it, Danny's men show up to drag him back to their boss. Another fight breaks out, and this time, Nick doesn't hold back. He unleashes all his pent-up frustration, beating them mercilessly. Just as things get intense, the police show up and take him straight to Golden, the Vegas Mafia boss, known as Baby. Baby informs Nick that Danny accused him of breaking into his room and killing his men. To settle things, Baby arranges a face-to-face meeting between them. Danny dramatically recounts how Nick attacked him and his bodyguards. But when Nick tells his version, it becomes clear that he never used a gun, meaning Danny is lying. Nick then brings up a crucial detail, the injuries Danny suffered. To prove it, Baby tells Danny to drop his pants. Danny refuses, which only confirms Nick's story. Baby, now convinced Nick had a valid reason for what he did, promises to handle the situation. Once Danny leaves, Baby warns Nick that more trouble will come his way. But Nick isn't the type to back down. Later, he stops by a diner for a meal, and Cyrus joins him. Cyrus admits he's scared to leave Las Vegas, calling himself a coward, but thanks Nick for what he's taught him. Then, out of nowhere, he hands Nick a check for $500,000 and a plane ticket to Corsica, urging him to get out while he still can. Before Nick can make a decision, Danny's men storm the diner. Thinking fast, Cyrus causes a distraction by singing loudly, allowing Nick to slip out. But Danny orders his men to hunt him down. Realizing he has no other choice, Nick decides to put an end to this once and for all. He takes down every last one of them. After the fight, Cyrus approaches him again, offering the $500,000 and the Corsica ticket. At first, Nick refuses, but after some persistence, he finally takes them. With Danny gone, it's only a matter of time before his father seeks revenge. Nick knows his time in Vegas is up. It's time to move on.